we're very happy that you're joining us today for this presentation. I have with me my colleague, Adam.
Yes, hello. My name is Adam. I also work here at the Swedish Institute.
And we've also with us a student, Camilo. Can you also?
Hi, my name is Camilo. I'm from Bolivia, and I am studying a master program in global studies here at Gothenburg, University of Gothenburg.
Perfect. So before we get into the presentation, I'll just want to give some short guidelines for today. So we are broadcasting this presentation also on YouTube. So if you get out of the room and you want to watch it later, you can see this presentation on YouTube. We've also a colleague joining us who is answering all your comments there, but feel free to also answer your questions here in the ask us questions here in the Q&A session. With that, yeah, we will answer the questions after the webinar. And we've also another webinar coming up on Friday that will be similar to this topic. And then we have 2 webinars next week that will focus on migration questions. So we won't cover questions in regards to the migration process today, but we will do that instead next week together with the migration agency, because they are the ones being better to help you guys. So how's the agenda for today? We're going to have a presentation around 20 minutes, talking about how it is to live and study in Sweden. Obviously, we also have a few information about COVID-19, as many of you have a lot of questions about that. And then Camilo will join us and give a little bit of tips as an international student in Gothenburg. And then after that, we will have a lot of time for all your questions. With that, I'm handing over to Adam.
Yes, thank you very much, Jan. Yeah, I just wanted to say something about the COVID-19 and that situation around that. And I'll talk a little bit about residence permits as well. But mainly, we will talk about residence permit in the webinars next week. Because then we will have an expert joining us and she will be able to answer all your questions. But yeah, so of course the situation is very unclear at the moment when it comes to the new coronavirus. What we do know is that there is a ban on non-essential travel to Sweden. That means only residents who are already residents in Sweden and citizens can enter Sweden. And it may be prolonged. We know that Swedish embassies and consulates are very limited abroad, in some countries more than others. They have reduced staff, they might have reduced opening hours, they might even be closed. It depends from country to country. Universities are holding distance learning, so the universities are basically shut down. There are no students basically going to the universities. And there is a recommendation for caution, social distancing, and travel restriction in Sweden. So for you students who are admitted to programs this autumn, the admission selection, which is over, went on as normal. So the COVID-19 situation didn't factor into the decisions. The same is true for the scholarship selection. When it comes to deadlines for tuition, housing, submission of documents to your university, you should contact your university for the most relevant information. It might differ from university to university, so it's really important that you check with your university of admission. The same is true for the autumn semester start dates and the possibility of distance learning this autumn. This is something you need to check with your university. They will have the most relevant information. When it comes to residence permits, the application process is open as normal. You apply online, but there are issues in this whole process. So the first part of the process where you apply online, that is as previous years. But then the later stages of the process, when you have to go to a local embassy to hand in additional information, those stages might be disturbed. This is because, of course, of the embassy's potential like changed opening hours, etc. So you should apply online early, but only after you have all your documents in order. It's important to apply with a complete application. Don't just send in a semi-complete application because that may mean it takes longer in the end. And the decisions that you will get on whether you can get a residence permit, that's not based on the COVID-19 situation. However, receiving your residence permit card, that might be affected by the COVID-19 situation. So it's good to apply early, and then we will just have to see, and we will keep you informed what happens in the later stages. So it's really important that you check the information on the Swedish Migration Agency. I will have links later, and check the information on your local Swedish embassy, because that's really, really key for you to receive your residence permit. And of course, check travel restrictions in your home country. Check the Swedish travel restrictions as well. Because even if you have the residence permit, if there is a travel ban, it's unfortunately not possible to enter the country at this point. Here are some links that I've compiled. It's good to check the website of your university. It's good to check the Swedish Migration Agency website, check the Swedish embassy website, your local embassy. And there's also a Swedish official website for the latest news in the COVID-19 situation in Sweden. These links will be sent out to all you participants or the audience member after the webinar. Right, I think with that, I'm gonna go on to our main presentation. And I'm gonna hand over to my colleague Jan again.
Yes, so now you've learned how the situation is a little bit more about how it is at the moment. So it might seem a little bit weird to hear a few of these slides, but obviously let's talk a little bit about Sweden and the country you will be living at least for the next year or the next 2 years, depending on what kind of a master or bachelor you're doing. Some of you may have some information about Sweden, of course, that you're maybe even experts. Some of you don't. So some of you have maybe just learned that we're not Switzerland, but we're actually Sweden, the country in the northern part of Europe. And I think one of the most important parts when it comes to coming to Sweden is obviously language. So you're coming to a new country. What language do you speak here? Well, Sweden has an official language, that's Swedish. Or we actually have a few more, but the majority of the people here in Sweden speak Swedish. But you don't need to know Swedish to survive here. Actually, in all your classrooms, everything will be in English. And 95% of all Swedish people speak English. So there's no problem for you in your daily life to survive without knowing a word Swedish. You can just do everything in English. Obviously, we really encourage you to learn Swedish during the time you're here. It will really help you to just get to know Swedish people, get a footstep into the job market. So it's obviously highly encouraged to learn Swedish. And many of the universities actually will help you doing this. So there's different options. So if you have some time over, we really encourage you to learn some Swedish. You never know what you will need it for in the future. So this is a map of Sweden, and here are a few companies that I'm sure many of you guys know already. Let's say Skype, Spotify, Volvo, and if there are some gamers under you, Mojang, actually the founders of Minecraft, one of the biggest games in the world. So what is so unique for Sweden? Well, many of these companies are actually the world leaders in their industry. And this is rather impressive, given that Sweden has only a population of 10 million people and makes us the country with the largest amount of multinational companies per capita. So if you come to Sweden, you'll get to know a lot of international companies. And Sweden, after the Silicon Valley, is the second biggest startup hub. So you have a really good chance to, like, if you think about an app on your phone, and you would look up the app developers, many of them actually come from Sweden. I'm always surprised when I see a new app that, oh, that's a Swedish company. So it's very cool to be in a country where innovation is so highly regarded. So some useful facts. For those of you who didn't know, Sweden has its own currency. It's the Swedish kroner. It's a currency that we actually hardly see anymore because Sweden has come into like an almost cashless society. So the actual notes are very rarely used. So everything goes by card. So major credit cards, just normal debit cards. And mobile payments are very big here in Sweden. For me, who is coming from Germany, it's a very controversial point when I come back to Germany because in Germany you love cash, and here in Sweden, I can't even remember the last time I've used a cash. So it's very different situation. So as I mentioned, we have 10 million people living here in Sweden. So some of you might actually come from a city that is bigger than the whole country or when it comes to population. So we have Stockholm as our largest city with roughly 1.4 million people living here. After that, we have Gothenburg with 500,000, Malmö 300,000, Uppsala with 140,000. So this means we're quite a large country in Europe, but not so much population. So there's a lot of space for you to discover nature. There are 3 major airports that you probably would arrive to within Sweden or nearly to Sweden. You have Arlanda Airport, which is our national airport here in Stockholm. You have Landvetter, close to Gothenburg, and then you actually have Kastrup, which is the airport of Copenhagen. So for those of you who would study in the southern part of Sweden, you probably would travel to Copenhagen instead. Sweden and religion. It's often a very topic that many of you guys ask us. So how is it with religion in Sweden? Well, actually 64% of Swedes are member of the Swedish church, but only 29% claim to be religious. So many of them, if you're a member of the Swedish church, you pay taxes to the Swedish church. So I think the majority of the people that are doing this in order to finance the Swedish church and all the buildings that are renovated from that money. So it's not so much religion here, if you would say that. 1 out of 3 Swedish marriages are civil weddings. So you can see that the majority of us here are actually just doing a civil ceremony. So how is it with other religions? Well, we have the Church of Sweden as the biggest one, but then already comes the Islamic and Pentecostal, Catholicism, and Syrian Orthodox. This means there's like a lot of different religions that here in Sweden, and you don't need to worry. If you have like a specific religion, it's fine. Swedes are very generous. We are open, we're a free country, so you can live whatever you want. So we were happy to have everyone here. With that said, we'd like to give you some tips on how to enjoy Sweden. And for this, Adam is coming back into the play.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. I wanted to share some tips that we have gotten from talking to students here. And international students tend to really enjoy their time living and studying in Sweden. But these are some tips to make it even more, even better. Okay, let's go. The first tip, buy a bike or public transport card. So depending on where you live, this will be absolutely key and very like a natural thing to get a bike. And you will be able to bike almost everywhere. Most Swedish cities are really small. Even Stockholm, I would tend to bike almost everywhere. And very, very few students use cars for transportation. And you don't really need a car to get around in Sweden. The cities are so small. There's great train service between the cities. And yeah, public transport just works really, really well. But yeah, in many smaller Swedish cities, it's just easier to go by bike because the distances are all never that long that you really need to go by public transport even. So my next slide, this is a saying which is extremely common in Sweden. There's no bad weather, just bad clothes. Meaning Sweden can be cold. It can be like really cold, especially in the north. But there's always proper clothing. Even for the coldest weather, you can find proper clothing. So if you're cold, it's because you didn't dress well. But actually, it's not as cold in Sweden as people might think. I think the average temperature in middle central Sweden, where most big cities are, is around 0 degrees, -1 degree in winter. That's the average. So that's not very different from other parts of Northern Europe. And most of all, a good thing to keep in mind, Swedish houses are built extremely well and are very well isolated. So your university building, your library, your home, you're never going to be cold. It's always going to be like that perfect temperature. And it's only really when you go outside that you need to prepare to, experience cold. So that's pretty nice. Yeah, this is also a very important cultural concept in Sweden, fika. It means to go for a coffee break together with friends, have a chat over coffee and pastry. It's something you do at work, at school, at home, with friends, on a date, like you name it. You can have everything under this category, fika. And it's something you will do with your new friends and classmates all the time, basically. Actually, Swedes are the third largest consumers of coffee in the world, after Finland and Netherlands. So yeah, you know what to prepare for. You'll be drinking a lot of coffee, or at least seeing Swedes drinking a lot of coffee when you're here. Here's another weird sight that you might see your Swedish friends doing, like taking every chance. When there's sun, you take every chance to just enjoy that sunshine, especially now when springtime is just about like on the way. Yeah, you'll see a lot of Swedes just kind of sitting on park benches, soaking up the sun and enjoying that after the long winter. So there is an explanation for this strange behavior. It's because up in the north, even though the winters aren't very cold, they are darker, like significantly darker than other more southern countries in Europe. So in the winter, you don't have all that much sunshine. You have it during the day, but for fewer hours. Especially in the far north, you don't have any sunshine. But then in the summer, you have a really, really long days of sunshine. And in the far north, you have sunshine all the day around. So that's something to get to really like, yeah, you'll have to get used to that darkness and the sunshine. But it's really, it makes for a very special environment living in Sweden. Oops, I clicked way too much. Here we go. Okay. Here's another thing about Sweden. We have a lot of countryside and beautiful nature. And we have this law called the right to roam, which gives everyone in Sweden the freedom to kind of roam and like go around the nature freely. So it isn't divided up into private properties in a way that you can't access. You can, as long as you don't go too close to private houses, you can kind of wander around the nature as you wish. And hiking and like going out into nature is a big hobby in Sweden. That's something that you will have access to in nearly any place in Sweden. And yeah, we really want to recommend that you take the opportunity to travel when you're in Sweden. See the countryside, go up north, go down south, go like to the seaside. There's so many nice, beautiful parts of Sweden, and it's very like open, accessible. There's no entry ticket, and you can take trains almost anywhere in Sweden. Just like bring some comfortable clothes and yeah, try some hiking. And you can always, talk about the weather with your new Swedish friends. This is the most quintessentially Swedish topic. Like whenever you don't know what to talk about, just talk about the weather. It's something we think about a lot because the weather can kind of change a lot. And especially in the summer, we all want to go outside and enjoy that sun, but the summer can also be like, sometimes it might not look like summer, sometimes it might be a little bit rainy. So yeah, it's something we talk about a lot. And like speaking of making conversation with Swedes, we Swedes are very nice people, tend to be like brutally honest at points. So if Swedes invite a student to dinner or to like socialize, we really mean it. It's rarely just like something you say to be nice. But it means it can take a while to get to know, to make friends with Swedes. Swedes can seem a bit reserved at first, but once you become friends, you are really like friends. You really are friends. Like it means something to be friends. Another thing about living in Sweden, punctuality is quite important. So make sure you arrive on time. And there really are no excuses because public transport, etc., tend to be like quite punctual. And this applies both to like meeting friends and going to class. It's like one of those unwritten rules. Yeah, so if you decide to meet a friend, you should really try to be there on time. But more importantly, if you have a meeting, whatever, with your study buddies or internship, make sure to like be there on time and send a text message if you're not actually going to arrive on time. Another thing about Sweden is that we really enjoy recycling and we have so many opportunities to recycle. We recycle 95% of our household waste, and we are so kind of efficient that we ask neighboring countries to like import some of their waste as well for recycling. So this is a great way to really try out a quite sustainable way of life living in Sweden, and you get to really like, yeah, feel like you're living in a very environmentally friendly way. So those are the tips and tricks. I wanted to go on to an introduction to university life and what it's like to study in Sweden. And yeah, congratulations again on choosing to study in Sweden. I think you made a good choice. And yeah, here are some more tips on how to kind of study in Sweden. So Sweden is not a very hierarchical place. That counts for the universities, but also for workplace and socially. And you can address your professor by his or her first name for sure. You can talk to your professor as kind of an equal. And this is really like you can question your professor. You can raise your hand in class and come with your opinion. And this really like reflects Swedish society as a whole, which tends to be quite informal. We don't have a very strict hierarchy, and you're not expected to, use all these titles when you're talking to people. In Swedish universities, you are responsible for planning your own work. And you need to kind of learn how to think for yourself, to plan your studies on your own a little bit as well, and to be creative. So you won't be force-fed like chunks of text to memorize. It's more about finding solutions on your own. And so for this, it could be really good to find study buddies, study partners to like really discuss coursework together with and like help you, think creatively and come up with good solutions and just kind of process what you learned. But also to prepare yourself for group work. Group work is a big part of studying in Sweden. And you'll get a lot of it. Like you might even be a bit sick of it in the end, but you'll be learning some really valuable skills for the work life. I think wherever you work, this is going to be required of you, and like to be able to work in a team, of course. And in Sweden, you really get that experience. You really get to practice working in a team, and all that comes with that. And Swedes are quite good team players, very consensus driven, like we're trying to bring in all the opinions in a team and try to find the like common ground. So yeah, I think it's a good environment to really learn how to work in teams. Yeah, this comes back to the that kind of non-hierarchical aspect of studying in Sweden. You're really like allowed and encouraged to question your professor, question what they say, and don't always agree with them, so that you will have a discussion in the classroom. That's really encouraged. And there's normal for there not to be a very like clear correct answer in the classroom. So discussion is more important than finding the right answer. And being able to think critically is like really, really valued skill in Swedish universities and in Swedish work life. So really like expect to have your own thoughts and share them. So finally, I wanted to share some resources here about studying in Sweden. We have all our social media and our website, studyinsweden.se. We also have some resources for learning the Swedish language already online from your home country. The website learningswedish.se is a free online Swedish course that we here at the Swedish Institute provide.
There's even an app.
There's an app as well, right? Yeah. No excuse. You can start studying Swedish immediately after this webinar. Although, like Jan said before, you don't really need Swedish language to get around in Sweden, but it could just be a nice cultural thing. I also wanted to mention alumni chapters. We have a lot of alumni chapters in like different countries. So that's something for you after you have graduated and maybe gone back to your home country. You can join an alumni chapter and, you know, network with them. And I wanted to mention, we have a, like you see on the screen, an alumni chapter in Mexico, who have a Facebook page, and they will be doing Facebook Lives for you all, like admitted students, just kind of telling them a little bit about what it's like to be to have been a student in Sweden. So that's a page you can look at, join, and that's just one example. There are many local chapters, but I happen to know that they have Facebook Lives coming up, so I recommend you having a look at that.
I think the Indonesians, for example, they also have that.
For sure.
Many of our, like wherever you come from a country, check out, there's probably an alumni chapter and they will do something.
Yeah, and you can find upcoming alumni events all over the world on our website, alumni.si.se. So these links, I will send them out to you as well. Don't worry, you don't have to like copy them down immediately. But with that, I wanted to hand over to Camilo, who will talk a bit about his experience studying in Sweden.
Yes, I will talk about my experience. I will share.
Perfect. Yes.
Okay, I will share.
Also, we see that many of you are already asking questions. We'll answer all your questions after this presentation, so don't worry. We'll do that after this presentation.
And for everyone following us on YouTube, our colleague Hannah is there answering questions in the chat.
Okay, so hi again, my name is Camilo. I'm studying a master program in global studies here at the University of Gothenburg. Actually, it was not my first time in Gothenburg. I was an exchange student, but I really felt in love of Gothenburg. So I pursued really hard to came back here, and I did it eventually. So I will share about, okay, to me, Sweden represents like, it changed my life like 100%. I'm coming from Bolivia, very different country, and in general, Latin America is very different for, I can see. So for me, it was really different. The system university, the nature, just to know a really different continent was really impressive for me. But Sweden especially, I think I'm glad that I am here for many reasons. I think the first one, like as a student life, which I'm very grateful, I think is the nature and the landscapes, because even in winter, now in the spring and in autumn, you can see like nature everywhere. and I learned how to live as a student and also like with the nature. I am living in a Swedish neighborhood, which I have like a lake really close to me. And also there is another forest there. And also just in front of my faculty, there is a very nice park called Slottskogen. So it's like you can find the nature everywhere. So I'm really happy of that. And I don't know, for me, that was really amazing. And I have also some pictures here. In winter, maybe it can be a little bit cold, and also, but if you survive that, then everything is really great. But I think that for you, if you come on autumn, it will be really nice because I think it's like the best season because the colors. But then it become a little dark. But also there are some really nice days, and then you really appreciate that. So, and I don't know, I think that that was the perfect match for me. Like I can be studying, I have nature, I have everything. So that changed my life a little bit. I can talk about like this was for me an international experience. And as I am studying a master program in global studies, I really find people from everywhere, but it was everywhere, from Iran, from Brazil, from Peru, from Sweden, from Germany, from France, for I don't know, Spain, Greece, Nigeria, uh, Uganda. I don't know. I have like classmates from everywhere, which is really nice. I have a picture there, like with some of my classmates. This is my university, and also I am an SI scholar. So I also met some people from Latin America, and that was really great. So we have also like keeping in touch to see how different perspectives are from different cities from Sweden. And also I rent a house in a Swedish house. Then I could really be into the Swedish life. Like it's like how the individuality is really important. I can say I one of the persons that has sweet friends, especially like my landlord and his family, which for me was a really great experience. For instance, I don't know how to ride a bike, for example, but I learned here, so it was really crazy for me. And I don't know, many stuffs like the Swedish food, and I don't know, for me was an international experience also because as I have friends from all over the world, and you will have for sure from many different countries, you also are like learning different cultures. But in Sweden, which is really interesting for me, like I have Asian friends. I don't know. I have eaten any kind of food, not only Swedish food, like Nigerian food, like Asian food. It was like, for me, being in Sweden was really an international experience. And I think you will know that you will meet a lot of people for different contexts. So you will have friends from all over the world. Also, I like the student life in Gothenburg, mainly because you have like unions, you can hang out, you have the library time, you have the cooking. So remember that you are not gonna be the only student. Like basically most of people is coming to Sweden to study, which is really nice. So then you have like the same path, like studying, you have to learn new stuffs. So as you see in some of my pictures, I made a lot of friends, and I'm kind of introvert at the beginning. So for me, it was really nice to have many friends. So I can join many unions. Also, we could do like library times with some students, with some of my friends. We also met just to cook. Also, I applied to be a digital ambassador, which you can do if you are coming for the autumn semester. And also, as I told you, sometimes I have friends from Latin America that live in different cities. We sometimes travel. With that excuse, we can travel to different cities just to meet people, to practice maybe our Spanish to don't. So I think that was really great. So in that way, I think that the student life for me was really great. I think that you need to just to try to meet different kind of people, and then I think it's really nice. Then also I think that for me, I think that studying Sweden was like a network also. I am just like 8 months in Sweden, but I did a lot of networking because Sweden is well known for many different things. So, for example, it's very known for sustainability, for instance. So I could apply for a forum in Egypt about sustainability. And as I am studying in Sweden, as I am a master student in Sweden, I want that position to travel like a week to Egypt. So I met different kind of people and it was so great. Also, when I was an exchange student, I met some people from Germany that lives in Germany. So it's like you can travel and you do really networking, and that's why I really like it. And also, if you travel around, you say that you were in Sweden, you always met like a Swede or someone that knows people from Sweden, and it's really interesting. That I love that. It can be like also topic of conversation, and as Adam says, it's like the weather is like the topic of conversation always. So I think I like that. So the networks, I have to thank to Sweden for the networking I did, and I think that you will do the same. So I think you will be lucky with that. And basically that, I think maybe you will have many questions about my student life here. Most of the things Adam and Jan explain about that. But I can see that studying Sweden is really a very international experience. It's not just studying Sweden. You can really feel that it's like a very international. I think that's my presentation. Okay.
Thank you very much, Camilo. Very nice to hear. Super nice presentation. And with that, I think we'll open up for questions. We already have a lot of questions from our audience. And meanwhile, we're answering questions on YouTube separately. But let's see here. Which question have you got?
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. I have already for 2 papers. So let's start with accommodation questions. Someone has heard about the Swedish system of earning points and standing in a queue system.
Someone already knows a lot.
Exactly. And they're wondering if that's the only way how to find flats or rooms, or are there different options?
It's a good question. I mean, can you say something general, and then Camilo can add something from his experience? So in general, it's very specific for every country and university. And your university will send out information on like the resources they have to offer accommodation and what you need to do to like get in queues and to apply for accommodation. And you should do that as early as possible. Like
some universities even give you a housing guarantee, so then you just need to make sure to follow their guidelines, but not all universities will do that.
So really make sure to check the guidelines and be really be early on this, so make sure that you get something. Camilo, what was your experience in Gothenburg?
I had like 2 experiences. The first one was like as an exchange. It was so easy because the university get my place. But as a free mover now, you need to be on the queue system. I think that's very important. And I think that you don't really need to have even the residence permit. And also you don't really need to be in Gothenburg to be on the queue system. So I think that will be like the first step to do it, just to sign up for the queue system, just in case you need it. But also there are so many Facebook pages, and also your university will help you a lot. But you have to ask them also sometimes. I think you don't have to doubt in sending an email saying that you are having troubles finding a place. And I think they will give you options. Actually, that's how I find my place here. Like I was like on the queue system, but I didn't not on time this time. And then I sent my university, and some professors say, oh, I know someone, and they help us. Actually, eventually my program helped to all of us to find a place. It was hard at the beginning perhaps, but then they really care about us if we are really having a proper place to study, which is nice. So I think that the first step can be just be on the queue systems. As your university, because as Adam says, there are some universities that deserve some places for the students, but some of them not, but they really care about where are you living. So, but you have to ask. You don't have to just think, oh, this is gonna happen or something. I think you have to talk, and then they will help you, of course.
Yeah. Good advice. The housing market is quite like difficult in Sweden in general. So finding an apartment is not like it's not easy. But as a student, you will get a lot more help, and you should really like make sure to read the emails from your university and be in touch with them.
Follow-up question on this: what can you expect as like costs for accommodation? Camilo, maybe you can.
Yeah, I think that if you are gonna study, first you are gonna find like a room. So a room is not that expensive. But if you want like a really complete apartment, it's gonna be more expensive, of course. But I think for the beginning, it's nice just to have a room. Then you can really know the neighborhoods and everything, and then you can move better. But I don't know. I think 3,000 until 4,000 for a room, for a proper room in a nice area can be nice, like you can have. But I also know people that pay more, but they have like more facilities, and of course like in a very central area. But I think you can decrease the prices if you also live not outside the city center. And as Adam and Jan said, the public transportation is basically perfect. You can go anywhere, and if you know how to ride a bike, not like me, you can also go by bike. So I think 3,000, 4,000 can be like a very good price. But you have to be aware of some scams people also. So I think you have to take care of that. Don't do it and ask about the price.
One thing that we would always recommend is don't pay anything in advance. So like if something looks or sounds weird, then it might be weird. So follow your guts.
This is if you're looking at ads, outside of the university websites. If you're looking at ads, be careful.
But otherwise, we have a good article on our website about accommodation where there's also a little bit more information. What is the costs?
Right. So go on to studyinsweden.se, and there's a bunch of information there as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
We follow up on the cost of living question. Camilo, what do you think is like what are like the general costs of living in Sweden? How expensive is Sweden? Like many people say Sweden is very expensive. Is it true? What do you?
I must say I got scared like when I arrived, but then I realized that we have to be like smart buyers, because if we just go for a regular supermarket and go to find like the very typical things, and you don't really know the brands and that stuff, it's gonna be really expensive. So you got scared a little bit at the beginning. It's not really cheap as other countries, of course, but I think that if you know how to buy it smart, you can find anything. And also you have to realize that it's better to cook yourself, because any meal outside is really expensive, I must say. But I think that happens the same in my country, for instance, like going out is really expensive, so we don't really go out that much. So I think that everyone in Sweden, at least all of the people I know, Swedes and non-Swedes, they really cook. So I think depends of that. I eat like twice a week outside, so that maybe can be, that's why my budget is a little bigger. But I don't know. I think it depends also on the cities. I live in Gothenburg, that is like the second biggest city, and in Stockholm can be more expensive. But I have friends that lives in other small cities, and they really save a lot of money, for example. So I think you have to check. We have also a blog about different prices, to not be really precise in the amount, but it's gonna be scare you at the beginning. Don't worry. But then you can just work with that, I think.
But it's good to know. Someone is asking if there's like reduced prices for students on public transport, for example, and
that's a very good. Yeah, for students, for public transportation, you always have a decreased price, which is like 500 or 400 crowns less, which is nice. And also there are these after Friday things sometimes where you can find very cheap food. And also in your university, you will have cafeterias, which have really cheap things for students. So that's very nice. And as we are sustainable, also we share some chicken, and we try to make grow some stuffs. So I think that that's also nice. So you can learn that here actually. So I think that can be a good advice too.
Nice.
We have a question here asking Camilo, how is the process of transitioning from on-campus classes to online sessions?
I must say, I think I have more homework, maybe. I don't know. I think, yeah. I think that you will realize that here in Sweden, the internet, I think, is pretty vital. Also, you can find internet basically everywhere, in all restaurants, in all libraries, in all the public places. So I think this transition was not really painful for me, at least, because we also have like a very connected online system at my university, for instance. So the only thing that changed was like maybe the interaction with the students in the classroom. But for instance, my teachers are recording the lectures very nicely. And also they have now the opportunity to interview some authors, some scholars from other countries, as everybody's like in quarantine. So we are meeting like even more professors and more lecturers than before, which I think that affects a little, but like academically talking, I think that for me it was kind of improving a little bit. But yeah, maybe like the interaction was kind of hard at the beginning, but I think we have many different types. I think, yeah, we are trying to figure it out, but actually we have more group works also, so we don't really, we are still doing the same, but through the computer.
Yeah, that was another question someone had here. Are the sessions still interactive, or is it just like a one-to-one, like a one-on-person talking lesson? But
I think it depends of the program. For my program, for instance, we have pre-record lectures, and also we have a live sessions. So we have both, and even we have more times as the professors really care about us. I think, at least in my university, they have also drop-in sessions where you can just meet him to ask something. So yeah, just that.
Adam, question for you. Work permit or working during your studies. Can you work part-time or as a freelancer while you're studying in Sweden?
Yes, practically it is possible. The kind of residence permit that you get as a student in Sweden, it also allows you to work. There's no limit on the time you can spend working. But with that said, I think you should consider your university degree a full-time occupation, and that's going to take up most of your time. So it's perhaps not realistic to think that you can work many hours while you're also studying. And certainly it's very difficult if you have the ambition to try to finance your studying with a part-time job. That's very, very difficult. And there's no guarantee in finding a job. But yes, it is practically possible, and many students do have part-time jobs, sometimes at the university, sometimes, you know, any possible any possible part-time job. And also I can add that after you graduate, you get an extra visa or extra residence permit time when you can just stay in Sweden and either look for a job, do an internship. You can do whatever with that time, but you get some extra time. Is it 12? It's 12 months now.
It's now 12 months. It was 6 months before. Now we've just got it prolonged to up to a year.
So you get some time to look for a job after you're finished with your degree as well.
Yes. Question towards the budget here as well. How much cash do you recommend to bring? Well, I don't think you need to bring any cash.
Yeah, like Jan said, it really is a cashless society in Sweden. It's difficult to use cash almost. Some restaurants don't even accept cash anymore. You have to pay with card, or you have this little app on your phone where you can send money as well. So bringing cash, I don't know, Camilo, what do you say? Do you think it's Did you experience any need for
Yeah,
that?
I think you have to prepare to bleep a lot if you came here. Bleep is when you just do, even you don't have to put your password now. It's yeah, you just have to bleep the card. So yeah, I think that is like, yeah, it's like I haven't seen cash. I think I only see cash like the first 3 weeks because I had some cash.
Yeah.
But then after I had my bank account, I think I haven't seen it. Like, yeah, it's like you have also a nice app here that is Swish. So you can just send the money to your friends. You can split, you can chip. Yeah, I think that yeah, you don't really need to bring cash, but I can suggest that if you have some savings and you want to bring money to Sweden, you can ask your bank in your country to use your debit or your credit card here in Sweden. For example, I'm from Bolivia. We are not like a really big country economically talking, but my bank, for example, allowed me to use my card in Europe. So they activated my card to use in Europe. So like the first week also I realized I could really bleep and do that stuff. So I could use my card here. So and I didn't have any extra fee, which it was good for me because if I just drop money from the cashier, I will have like a fee. But just using the card, I didn't have fee. So I think you have to ask your bank which is the best way to bring money here in Sweden.
But of course, there are also students from countries where you actually don't have credit cards or you can't pay by credit cards. You can't use your cards in Sweden. Then, of course, it's good to bring cash and until you have a bank account.
Of course.
Because it can take a moment until you get your bank account. So, of course, you can always use cash. So, but don't bring tons amounts of cash because Swedes really love cashless payments.
That's a good advice. Yeah.
We have a question from an EU student in regards to public health care. We recommend that you have that you use your European health insurance card, but check with the university you've applied to. For non-EU students, health insurance is, I think, many of the universities actually cover.
Yeah, it's covered. And if you're here for longer than in Sweden for longer than a year, then you get like a Swedish identity number. You get like and with that you get the same benefits as a Swedish citizen would get. So then you have like the healthcare included in that as well. But yeah, there is health insurance included in for all students, I believe. But yeah, check with your university to make absolutely sure.
Yeah.
And this is also, of course, a requirement for the residence permit. So this is something you need to really find out before you apply for the residence permit.
We have a lot of questions in regard to COVID-19. What can I do if my embassy is closed?
Yeah, good question. And it's good to come back to this. So at the moment, we don't know exactly what's going to happen like down the line when you will need to visit that embassy. We know that some embassies are closed now. And we know some of them are, they're open, but you have to reserve a time to visit them. And if they are closed, it's going to be a problem, of course, and that's going to be difficult to solve. Sometimes you can go to another country, possibly. And for some of you, you have to go to a neighboring country if you don't have a Swedish embassy in your home country. And so if you have a travel restriction or even like if you can't travel within your country, I mean, it's going to be a big challenge, of course. We can't make any promises or guarantees. It's a very exceptional time and we don't really know exactly what's going to happen, but we and your university will try and keep you as informed as possible. And I would really recommend that you check the local embassy and migration agency website as well. I'll send those links to you. But yeah, hopefully it'll be better and you will be able to visit the embassy, but we can't guarantee anything.
And same goes for there was a few people that said like my passport is running out and I first need to contact the my local country to get my passport renewed. So I have a valid passport for the time I'm coming to see. Of course, we know these are like things that are affecting your application. As I mentioned, I think the best is to like check with your university, check with the local embassy.
Yeah. Definitely.
What is the best way to do?
Yeah, and prepare early. Like prepare everything you can as early as possible. and like make sure once you have all your documents for your residence permits, apply for the residence permit. And yeah, that's the best advice we can give so far, and we hope everything works out.
There were a few people asking if they should contact the universities if they have any questions. And yes, if you feel like this is something you want to let your university know, write them. They are very happy about all the students contacting them. It's a little bit like we mentioned before, like Camilo also mentioned, Swedes are very, especially here, very informal. So there's no problem in contacting your university. They are very happy to help you.
Yeah, definitely.
With that, Camilo, we have someone asking if you can have one-to-one private meetings with a professor after a lesson. What would you say?
Yes, I don't know, but at my program, for instance, we have drop-in sessions, and they are booking actually like talkings between just the professor. So I think it depends of your program, but mine, yeah, I'm having that. And I think most of them are having that. But yeah, I think it all depends of the program. Mine is social science, for example. So I think it's really nice to talk, to debate and that stuff, but maybe more technical stuff, so I'm not pretty sure.
Very good.
Sweet.
I had one question actually, if you don't mind. We were asked to talk a little bit about safety in Sweden in general. Like, is it safe in Sweden, in the cities, everything? And while it's difficult to find statistics, I guess, Sweden is definitely one of the safest countries in Europe. I think we have a lot of students who tell us that they feel very safe in Sweden. Also, it's very safe to be women in Sweden. Like, you can kind of walk around central Stockholm in the evening, and it's definitely feel safe for everyone. And yeah, it is a very safe and calm society in general. And yeah, Camilo, I don't know, what has your experience been? Do you agree with?
Yeah, I think that it's a pretty safe place. You don't really see like robberies or something very common. I think that's not very common. And from female friends, they always have this issue that they usually feel safe walking through the city at night or going home, for instance. So I think that in that terms, it's a pretty safe city. And yeah, for me also, it's like, for me, especially coming from Bolivia, I think that I really feel totally safe. But yeah, maybe I cannot have that comparison, but with other European countries. But yeah, I think it's pretty safe. You can totally walk at night just for hours and nothing is gonna happen, I guess.
Yeah, good point. And if you're wondering what is the sound here in the background, our office just decided to open their blind curtains.
Yeah.
So it's automatic, we can't steer it. So sorry for that. There is the question on how much time does it take to learn Swedish? I guess that's a very individual question.
We have someone in the room who has learned Swedish.
As in a short time.
Jan here, yeah.
So obviously, if you have a background like me from Germany, Swedish is quite easy to learn because it's a similar kind of language. But in general, I would say Sweden is one of the easier language when it comes to grammatic. Camille, have you started learning some Swedish?
I start at the beginning, but then I kind of drop because of the time, especially I didn't manage well that. But yeah, I think that if you came from my native language is Spanish, for instance, yeah, some pronunciations are difficult, but I really regret not to learn before, because by that time I had more time. Now I didn't have so many time. So yeah, but I think that if you have time now, you should try to immediately. And I'm also starting the app now. I'm practicing it with my landlord. So yeah, I think it's a very nice language, because even if you are here and everything is in English, basically, you can really live only with English. I think it's nice to learn some Swedish words, especially for the supermarket, I must say.
Good advice. Yeah, and it might be nice to kind of in the social life, nice to know a bit of Swedish to kind of, I don't know, maybe have a better cultural understanding of your Swedish friends and kind of impress them with a bit of Swedish words as well.
We had a comment here. Someone read about the word lagom. Adam,
Oh, wow.
do you want to say something about the very famous Swedish word lagom?
Very Swedish word. And rumor has it that this word only exists in the Swedish language. I'm not sure if that's true. It means when something is like, it's an adjective meaning when something is just right, not too much, not too little, not too hot, not too cold. It's like, it's just right. But for us, that's a very positive thing. It's like, it doesn't mean it's like boring, it means it's perfect. We have a lagom amount of people, so let's get started. Something like that. And we love using this word. We use it all the time.
Yeah. Question about food here. Someone coming from an African country wondering if there's African food around the campus, around the city. Definitely. Camilo, how is it for you with like Latin American food? Are you?
Yeah, I found some Latin American food, but if you want to try a specific type of food, make friends of that city and they will prepare it for you. I think that's
Yeah,
that's a very good tip. And it's also a lot cheaper.
Yeah, a lot cheaper. And as a student, if you live in one of those shared housing, a dorm, I mean, it's perfect because you'll have students ideally from many different countries, and you can have these like dinner parties where you cook each other's different cuisines.
Yeah.
Great.
One quick question here that we can just quickly tick the box. Which airport do you use when you're traveling to Uppsala? In that case, you would go to Arlanda. Uppsala is very close to Stockholm.
Yeah.
And actually, Arlanda is closer to Uppsala than what it is to Stockholm.
That's true. Yeah.
So let's see here. We have a few questions in regards to scholarship. And especially to the SI scholarship. When do you figure out, when do you know you get the scholarship? I think it's on Friday.
Yeah, Friday. There'll be an announcement, right? Yeah. And you're actually a scholarship holder, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think that also that was the best thing that happened because then you have the funding and you have everything. But yeah, I don't know. I want to say you like just keep fingers crossed for the people that is waiting the scholarship. And yeah, this Friday is gonna be ready the announcement.
Yeah. And what is included in the, I mean, once you get the scholarship, what's included in that? I mean, not financially, but there's also the social aspect where you get to be part of the network, right? Could you tell us?
I think that first economically you have like basically everything, and you also have like extra things for some stops, I could say, if you manage it well, and also the networking. Then we have like a network that organize events during your city and also like around all Sweden. So as I said in my presentation, I think the networking is really important. Then also after the first semester, I got in contact with my alumni in Bolivia, for example, and they asked me to do some interviews and about that. So we are still connected. So I think that the SI in that terms is pretty nice networking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we mentioned, what Adam mentioned before in the links, the alumni networks. There's a lot of them. Adam mentioned Mexico. There's obviously also one in Brazil. There's one in Peru, as you mentioned. Look at the page that Adam that we sent you, and we're sure there's a lot of help also for you. There's a lot of question in regards to the residence permit process. Can I bring my family? How does that work? As we mentioned, we'll have another webinar next week on Monday and on Tuesday.
Yeah.
That is covering all these kind of questions. So we're not going into any detail here.
Yeah. You got the invitation registration link in the same email as for this webinar. And just like for this webinar, you can follow the residence permit webinar on YouTube as well, on our YouTube account.
Yeah.
Maybe I think we're about ready. We can do one last question maybe. I'll also pull up a screen here.
Yes. Question in regards to making friends with Swedish people. Is it really so hard? You've had that. Camilo, what would you say? Are Swedes so reserved?
Yeah, I think it must. I think that the problem is because we arrive with many things, like we think that we know what they think, but that's not true. So yeah, I made some Swedish friends, some Swedes. I think they are really great. And yeah, you can definitely do it. You just have to just not overthink about that and invite them to do lunch. Or I think you have to try to be just trying to try, and then you will do it eventually. It's hard. Yes.
Definitely. And I think being a student, that's the best opportunity you have, because then, of course, people are more open. But it's possible, I promise. Okay.
Should we do? There's one last question here in regards to the Camilo. How is the process in order to register with the Swedish population system? Can you like say something about the process? I guess you've applied with Skatteverket.
Yeah. I think the blogs we had in study in Sweden, now I am part of that. I think they were really helpful. Yeah, I think you have to be it in advance and you have to have everything ready. I think that's not really difficult, but sometimes you have to be on the queue also to wait for the ID, for example. But actually, it's not difficult. For me, especially, I came with the ISI scholarship, so I think they had registered that, so it was even more easy. But for some friends also was easier because they did like they really set good to the instructions, they follow it, they put all the documents together and they did it. So it's not that difficult. Maybe you have to wait just to collect the documents sometimes, but I think it's not difficult.
Perfect.
I think it's a, but you have to do it like it's the first thing you have to do also once you arrive. Try to figure it out how to do it.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna share the slide about the resources again.
And there's a lot of questions still coming in. We can't cover all of your questions. We're really sorry for this. If you have any questions that you don't feel we've answered, you can ask them on YouTube on the video there, or contact us on Facebook.
Yes.
That's a very good. We will answer all your questions for sure there.
Yeah. So like you see here, facebook.com/study in Sweden. That's our official Facebook account, and in the comments we help answer questions from students all the time.
Yeah.
So please go there.
Yeah. Or you can send us a message there. We will also answer that.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's like one last question that I really like here, very much on our Study in Sweden brand. How is Sweden towards the LGBTQ+ community?
Oh, very good question.
What would you say, Adam?
Yeah, I'd say it's a very, very open, tolerant country, and it's difficult for me to speak of their experience, but from everything we've heard, it's been very positive, and Swedes are like very tolerant, and I mean we have pride parades in like a huge amount of Swedish cities. Swedish universities also have like some pride events as well. So I'd say it's one of the like most open and tolerant countries there are.
Yeah, definitely. Especially talking about the pride, what I thought was like very cool. I learned here from our Study in Sweden account, the Pride on Ice. So we actually have a pride parade that is up in Umeå or Luleå.
Yeah, right.
During the winter, and it's on a frozen lake.
Right.
So very cool.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, you don't need to be afraid. As we mentioned with like the safety, Sweden is very a free and tolerant country. So you can be who you want here. We don't care whatever you want to be.
Yeah. Good point.
Just come here and be yourself.
Yeah.
With that, I think we say thank you, Camilo, for all your help and all the questions, your presentation, and everyone here joining us. We really looking forward to you coming to Sweden and studying here. We'll wish you all the best.
Definitely. And definitely luck. We know that this year is going to be a very difficult process, and we hope everything will work out fine. Most of all, we hope you're all like healthy, and that like your loved ones are healthy and safe. And yeah, hope to see you in Sweden this autumn.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.